Hi, I'm Dan Hegstad, and if you're thinking of visiting Minnesota, I've got some advice for you. Where does this come from? Well, a few years ago, I was going to visit Nova Scotia, and I was looking for this video about Nova Scotia. I found all kinds of websites, where to go, what to do, and they were helpful, nothing wrong. We had a great time in Nova Scotia. But what I was really looking for was a video from somebody who's lived there a long time, can kind of give you the upfront on the where to go, what to do from a local's opinion. So I thought, well, I'll at least do that for Minnesota. So I'm not selling anything. I don't have a hotel, I'm not a CVB or anything. I'm just a guy who's lived in Minnesota all my life. I've traveled probably every highway in Minnesota. I traveled so much for work. At one time, you could give me the name of any two towns in Minnesota, and I could legitimately tell you how long it would take and what highways to get there. Now, I don't have that skill anymore. It's been too long, but I've been everywhere in Minnesota. So if I were coming here and I had a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, and I were asking me, well, what should I do, Dan? Here's my opinion. Take it or leave it. My first advice would be to probably stick to the eastern and north central parts of the state. You decide what you like to do for fun and how much time and what you want to do. But the eastern part of the state, U.S. Highway 61 used to run from the Canadian border all the way down to the Iowa border and then on into southern states. Now from Duluth and north, it's a Minnesota Highway 61, and U.S. 61 starts somewhere around the Twin Cities and then, again, runs down the Mississippi Valley into Iowa. And big picture, that's probably kind of where I'd start you out. The Highway 61 from Duluth and north to the Canadian border is one of the greatest drives in the world. And what's nice is that you are going to see the lake almost the whole time. It's really a nice drive, and there's so much to see and do. There's a 600 or so foot hill on the north side of Lake Superior, so all those rivers that come down give you some nice waterfalls and hiking. There are many state parks. There is Split Rock Lighthouse. There, just north of the town of Silver Bay, you'll see you might miss it. It's called Palisade Head, and it's on the lake, and it's a 175-foot straight down cliff to Lake Superior, and you can drive up there and park, and then overlook the edge, and it's quite a view. Believe me, it is quite a view. And then you continue north. You're going to want to visit Betty's Pies outside of Two Harbors. Lutzen Resort is up there, and lots of resorts and hotels and cabins. The town of Grand Marais is not to be missed. And then continue on to the Canadian border at Grand Portage. There's a nice resort hotel casino there, and a nice park. Pigeon Falls, is that where that is? And if you time it right and you want to, you can take a boat from there out to Isle Royale. Check your map. Isle Royale is a significant island in Lake Superior, and it's actually part of Michigan. So if anybody asks you which states border Minnesota, yes, you'll say North and South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and then you'll say Michigan, and everybody will be surprised. But you could go out there for the day or few days, do some camping or hiking out there. Check it out. Isle Royale, it's a national park, too, so I need to get there to get my stamp in my national park passport. So there you go. That's it really is nice. Now, as long as you're in northern Minnesota, if you feel like doing some serious camping, there is the Boundary Waters canoe area. And you can rent from an outfitter. You could go, there is a highway called the Gunflint Trail that goes north from Grand Marais up to the Canadian border. And you'll find some outfitters up there on the edge of the wilderness. Or you go to the town of Ely. There'll be a number of outfitters there. They'll rent you everything you need, tell you where to go, give you some good maps and everything. But this is some serious camping. This is not for the faint of heart. You got to know what you're doing here and be prepared. There's probably no cell service up there. You are going to hang your food pack between two trees so the bears don't get it. I mean, this is the real deal. Great fishing, just spectacular scenery, plenty of mosquitoes, all that, but boundary waters. There's nothing else like it that I know of. You might want to continue north, go up to Voyageurs National Park, which is right by International Falls. I have yet to visit that one, but I will. I think this summer. There are state parks all over Minnesota, and there's not a clinker in the bunch. They are all good. I am going to mention Vermilion State Park. I have not been to that one. That one's fairly new, up by Tower in Sudan. There is Tower, Sudan, where you get to go underground in an old iron mine, and I think they take you down 1,000 feet or more, and they're doing scientific experiments looking for neutrinos. And you can learn all about that. That's in northern Minnesota. That's pretty cool stuff. Just south of Duluth, you will find Jay Cook State Park. The St. Louis River has a spectacular canyon running through there, swinging bridge, and it's pretty cool. So we're in northern Minnesota. I think you should consider going to the town of Bemidji. That is the original Paul Bunyan. And when you think Minnesota, you think Paul Bunyan and the statues in Bemidji. Now, this is my hometown, so I grew up with Paul, and they say it's one of the most photographed statues in the world. At one time, I heard it was number 1 or number 2 in the world. And it's pretty cool. You should see it. While you're in Bemidji, Lake Bemidji State Park, world-class fishing. It's terrific. And then you go a little bit south of there, and you'll find Itasca State Park, and that is the headwaters of the Mississippi. And I've been there many, many times. I still enjoy going there. If you're going to visit Minnesota and you got the time, yeah, you should go to Bemidji, see Paul and Babe, and go to the headwaters of the Mississippi. Now I'm going to go back east from Bemidji, and we're going to go to Duluth. Duluth is where you begin your voyage up the north shore of Lake Superior, but Duluth is special in itself. There's no place like Duluth. Again, it's on the hill, and so there's that. And ships from all over the world come to Duluth and come through Canal Park in Duluth, and they drop off or they pick up loads of coal and iron ore. They pick up grain and limestone and all kinds of things. Chances are, if you spent a day at Canal Park, you'd probably see 3 or 4 big ships and maybe even some ocean-going ships that come through there. It's just pretty cool. There's more in Duluth. If you like railroads, they have a terrific railroad museum, an excursion train, several trips a day. Glen Sheen Mansion. If you're into mansion tours, this one's pretty spectacular. Glen Sheen, right on the lake. I like Inger Tower. I'll let you Google that one. It's on the Skyline Parkway up the hill, and it's a beautiful park. The Rotary Club of Duluth is part of their centennial project a few years ago, completely renovated the tower and park, and it's really nice. It's worth looking at. Inger Tower. Lots more to see in Duluth. I'm not going to go into it all here, but you could easily spend a few days there before you head up the North Shore. Then I am in the town of Brainerd, and Brainerd was actually a railroad town back in the day. It was the beginning of the Northern Pacific Railroad was here. This was a railroad town 100% through and through for 100 years. Not so much anymore. Now it's a lot of tourism, healthcare, education, and so forth. But if you just want to find a Minnesota lake to hang out at, this would be a good place to start. Brainerd International Raceway. NHRA sanctioned races happen here. August is the NHRA Drag Race Nationals that happen here. Oh, and there's a Paul Bunyan in Brainerd, and this one talks. So if you go to the Paul Bunyan Amusement Center, they've got lots of rides and everything there, just east of Brainerd. Somehow Paul knows your kids' names. You walk in there and he'll say hi to your kids. It's pretty fun. And he's huge too. So Paul Bunyan in Brainerd. Now, I'm not a golfer, but I'm told that by those that are, that Brainerd is a great place to come and golf. Many courses and really spectacular ones too. So come to Brainerd. If you're fishing, a lot of people like to fish. I'm not big into fishing, but if you want to fish, Minnesota is the place to go. Itasca County has 1,000 lakes itself. That's where Grand Rapids is, just north of here. You can hire a guide almost anywhere and take you out, and you're almost guaranteed to catch fish and have a great time. And I'll talk about winter fishing in a little bit. So there's that's kind of northern Minnesota. Lots more to see and do. I can't begin to cover it all. Twin Cities are nice towns. Minneapolis and St. Paul, if you're going to have a city, you just can't go wrong there. Now, they do have city issues also, but Minneapolis is the city of lakes. All the parks around all the lakes, it's a pretty cool city. Arts, second to none. All the major sports teams, really serious art and concerts and sports and all the things you want in a city are happening in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And that's the shopping, Mall of America, the biggest mall in Minnesota. Now, if I died and went to hell, they'd send me to the Mall of America. But people like it, and it's right there. Tons of parking, hundreds of stores, amusement park inside. People come from all over just to go shopping at the Mall of America. It's just south of Minneapolis and Bloomington, right by the airport. So check out the Twin Cities. The Twin Cities is the confluence of the Minnesota and Mississippi rivers. That's where Fort Snelling is. That's where things kind of started. And just downriver from that, the St. Croix River meets the Mississippi. That's right near Prescott and Hastings. And the St. Croix Valley between Minnesota and Wisconsin is pretty cool. There's some nice state parks there. Visit that. And from Hastings and down south, that's where you get good old US 61 again. Red Wing, and south of there is a spectacular, they call it the Bluff Country, the Mississippi Valley. That's where the river really starts to widen out, and it is a spectacular drive. And so you could take the Highway 61 and all the things there are to see, go south in Minnesota, down to Winona, keep going down to La Crosse, where La Crosse, Wisconsin is, La Crescent, Minnesota. You can keep going south into Iowa, down to McGregor, Iowa, cross over into Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, and then jump on, I think it's Wisconsin 35 that goes north and come up the Mississippi on the Wisconsin side. That's just a mighty nice drive. It really is. Lots of state parks. Now, in southeast Minnesota, southeast of Rochester, and you want to visit Rochester, you might want to. It's the home of the Mayo Clinic, and it's a real city. And if you're into the history of the Mayos, they've got a nice museum and that. Let me mention Austin, Minnesota, which is south and west of Rochester. That's the home of Hormel. They say Hormel actually. They have the Spam Museum in Austin, Minnesota. That's right. And it may sound cheesy. I've never been, but I'm told it's pretty fun. And I got to tell you, when we were on Prince Edward Island, we came across the Canadian Potato Museum. And I had no idea it was there. But there it was, the Canadian Potato Museum, and it was just fun. It was one of the highlights of our trip to Cape Breton, PEI, and Nova Scotia. It was pretty cool. So visit the Spam Museum. Now, southeast Minnesota is limestone, and there are many, many canyons and caves and such, and makes for spectacular drives. And look up Lanesboro, Harmony, Preston, towns like that. There's a great former railroad I can't remember the name of the trail. I've ridden it a couple of times down there, Preston. It's really nice following the Root River. You want a great drive, there you go. So all that's in eastern Minnesota. Now there's a lot to see in western Minnesota. Again, more state parks, and there isn't a bad one in the bunch. They're all good. Pipestone is a pretty cool place. They quarried pipestone there, and the Indians would use it to trade. They have found quarried limestone from Minnesota traded with Indian tribes far and wide. It's pretty interesting to go look at that. It's open prairie. It's agricultural land. If you are a photographer, that late day light in western Minnesota is outstanding. You could take a picture of anything, and it's going to look great. But western Minnesota does have its own appeal, and it's not as spectacular as eastern Minnesota. Now, let me talk about winter, because if you're going to come here in the winter, you need to know about it. You need to know about winter in Minnesota, because if you're coming from somewhere else, you think you know winter, but you don't know winter till you've been in Minnesota. This is the real deal. You've had cold, and you've had really cold and bone-chilling cold, and you've had cold. But here it gets colder than that, and we talk about it in expletives. And then it gets colder than that, and then it gets windy. It just gets really cold here. But if you have the right clothes, it's not that bad, okay? The problem isn't the weather. It's the people aren't prepared, and they don't have the right clothes for it. And you need to get serious about that. But if you're going to go out fishing in the summer, you need your sunblock. If you're going to go out fishing in the winter, you're going to need the full body armor insulation. But it gets so cold here, the lakes freeze, and the ice can get 18 inches to 3 feet thick. Even more way up north. If you go out on Lake of the Woods, it's really thick ice, so you could drive on it easily. You could sit there in the cold, and you drill a hole through it. You get an ice auger, drill a hole through it, and you sit there and catch fish. People like that. Not me, but people do. So back in the day, we would make a fish house, and you'd get scrap lumber, and you'd make yourself a little shack you could drag out on the lake. It had holes in the floor so you could get through the ice, a little stove in there to keep you warm, and you'd bring your lunch out there, and that was fine. And then in the spring, you'd just drag it back on shore and burn it because it was just junk. Well, now they have real made fish houses, and some of them are pretty spectacular, I got to tell you. These have full heat. They're more like a travel trailer with holes in the floor, and then you lower them right down onto the ice. So you've got all the amenities you'd ever want, except, well, some have a bathroom, I suppose, a chemical toilet. But, there's... you cook, you got satellite TV and everything you could want. You could stay out there a couple of days and do your fish. You can rent those. And that's an experience like no other. Snowmobiling. This is where snowmobiling started. You can rent them all over the place. There's trails everywhere you look. You can skiing, cross-country skiing, downhill skiing, or especially around Duluth, Spirit Mountain, and snowshoeing. I do snowshoeing. And all that happens in the winter here. We do not stop. In Brainerd, we are the home of the world's largest ice fishing contest. It happens in January. It's run by the JCs. It's a nonprofit. They've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for charities, and it's pretty cool. Out on Gull Lake near where I am here, I think they drill 10,000 holes in the North Bay of Gull Lake, and then the next day they'll get a gazillion people that get out there and sit and catch fish. And it's pretty spectacular. It makes the national news. The BBC even hired me to shoot some video out there for a documentary they did. So that's pretty cool. I didn't mention biking, but biking, especially mountain biking, is big in Minnesota, and I'm a big mountain biker. So right near where I am in Brainerd, just east of here, if you look at your map, there's a town called Crosby and Ironton, and the Cuyuna Iron Range. It was an iron mining area for 80 years, and the mining is done. But now these piles of overburden and whatnot are perfect for mountain biking. We have the state of Minnesota has built the Cuyuna State Recreation Area, and that in our bike club we have some 80 miles of mountain bike trails purpose-built, and people are coming from all over the world to do this. It's a 15-minute drive for me. I just love it. And also, if you're into mountain biking, there's some great trails in Duluth. I like the Mission Creek trails south of Duluth. It's one you might check out. There's some pretty gnarly trails in Duluth. North of here by Grand Rapids is the Tioga area. There is Giants Ridge up by the town of Bawabik. It's a ski hill, so you can ride up in a chairlift with your bike and bike down. Near the town of Chisholm is a newer area called Redhead. I hear that's great. Up the North Shore by Lutsen is some great trails that are new. I haven't biked those yet. But if you're into mountain biking, Minnesota, keep us in mind. Now, I have a fat tire bike for winter biking. I've got 4.5-inch wide tires. They have studs in the tires. And you put about 3-4 pounds of air in your tire, and you can go out mountain biking in the winter. And again, it's just good clothes that you need. So I wouldn't say we make friends with winter, but we learn to get along. That's my opinion. So there you go. That's my opinion. If you came to me and said, Dan, what should I do in my 2 weeks in Minnesota? That's what I'd tell you. But then you do your research and you find out, do you like wineries? You can do that. There's breweries all over the place. There's lots more to do. I have barely scratched the surface of all you can do here. And you should do it. You should come to Minnesota and come more than once, because there's more than you can see in just a couple of weeks. That's it. My opinion. Take it or leave it. Come on, visit Minnesota. We're a great place. Take care.